my name's Allison McGrath, and I'm going to be talking about disaster management in Madagascar today. So to understand the disaster management in Madagascar and how it works, you first need to understand the lifestyles of the people living there. Madagascar is a developing country and doesn't have many resources. Out of the population of 19 million, about 71% of the Malagasy people are living in poverty, and 70% suffer with illiteracy. Only 15% of the population have electricity as well, which is extremely problematic in learning about the outside world and educating young children. There's also poor water, sanitation, and hygiene found in the country. Only 35% of the population have access to clean water. This contributes to epidemics and sicknesses all throughout the country, but more on that later. The lack of resources and poor agricultural planning leaves citizens starving and children often malnourished. Often people that live in Madagascar only make $2 to $3 a day to survive off of, which is not nearly enough. So this map provided shows the dispersion of poverty throughout the country. As you can see, it's predominantly worse in southern Madagascar. This is due to the amount of droughts and how droughts impact the resources and agricultural farming in the area. This graph, on the other hand, is from the World Bank, which is a major donor to Madagascar's disaster management programs. It shows the impact of natural disasters on the gross domestic product of Madagascar over the next 100 years. As you can see, cyclones are the largest contributor to the loss of resources and are becoming even more problematic. So let's talk about climate change in Madagascar, because this plays a major role in the natural disasters that occur there. There are two seasons experienced in Madagascar: a hot and humid rainy season, which is observed from November to April, and a cool and dry season from May to October. There's also something called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, which Madagascar lies on. This contributes to the heavier rainfall yearly. El Nino, which is a weather system in the Pacific Ocean and is caused by upwelling, causes abnormal winds and warmer surface temperatures and water with a lack of nutrients. It changes weather patterns globally, which contributes to droughts in Madagascar. As well as another impact of climate change is sea surface temperatures rising in the Indian Ocean and the regulation of temperature changes, with increasing temperatures in Madagascar by 0.1 to 0.2 degrees Celsius. This doesn't sound like that big of a deal or that big of an impact, but as the sea level rises, it erodes the beaches, ports, roads, and biodiverse ecosystems unique to Madagascar that can only be found in that area. So let's talk about the types of disaster that impact Madagascar. As you can see in these pictures below, droughts, cyclones, flooding, and storms and epidemics are the major contributors to disaster in Madagascar. Let's talk about cyclones for a minute, though, because these ones are probably the deadliest and the worst to the entire economic and health-related areas of Madagascar. Cyclones bring heavy flooding, which leads to epidemics. Flooding causes contamination of food sources, water sources, and also contributes to animal-borne disease spread. So without proper wash systems and an excess of flooding, more people are prone to fall into epidemics and get sick. And since there is not public health care or a big dispersion of healthcare available to the people of Madagascar, it kind of causes problems and sicknesses throughout the entire country. But more on cyclones. Their season is November through March, and they cause the loss of electricity, clean water, crops, and damage to buildings. A lot of people also have to be relocated due to the masses of homes that are destroyed, and they're put into camps. So let's talk about the disaster management offered by the government, which is a bit confusing and not all that helpful. So Madagascar's government is a recently established democracy. If you look down at the bottom right, that is President Andre Rajoelina, who was elected in 2018, along with his prime minister that was appointed, Christian Netse. But they gained independence from France in 1960 and have experienced civil unrest since. The instability stems from the poor economy and the limited resources available due to poor agricultural farming. The Prime Minister of Madagascar has a branch of office dedicated to prevention and emergency management with 4 relief structures in place. These include intervention engineering, which brings healthcare to those who do not have it by providing aid and education to the population on healthcare. They've been doing this in Sambara and Venerive East, which are locations in Madagascar. They're also working on civil protection in Mankara and have recently established firefighters in Mahajana, which is their capital. The efforts to improve the quality of life and safety in citizens of the Madagascar people have been observed recently, but are not effective enough by themselves in providing disaster management aid. So the implementation pattern is confused and top-down. There's a confused implementation pattern for disaster risk management seen in Madagascar, as most disaster aid comes from outside sources and a small portion from the federal government. That's why I believe it's top-down as well. Local government plays a little role in the preparation of disaster management, as more rural areas still consist of villages and their leaders, which is a much more informal role of government. So there is a lot of disaster aid offered by outside organizations. This includes the World Bank, which has granted the country $50 million in grants to establish catastrophe-deferred drawdown options. They provide immediate financial assistance to developing countries to implement a disaster management protocol and aid the country to deal with the frequently occurring disasters. The project established a meteorological monitoring for storms, as well as improved warning signals to vulnerable communities that don't have electricity, so they can't monitor their storm on their phones, just like we can. It's a lot different. Another big program is Madagascar's National Adaptive Program of Action, or NAPA. This approach includes modifications in coastal areas, agricultural and forestry, water resource management, infrastructure, and health. They have established anti-erosive techniques to preserve soil and contribute to the regrowth of endemic plants after deforestation. Deforestation has taken a lot from the people of Madagascar and has left bad agriculture in its path. So once all these trees are taken down, they don't really have a way to rebuild, and it ruins the soil. So the plan established also aimed at raising in-country revenue by transferring forest management to local communities, reforestation, and aid in farming and livestock populations. So by teaching the citizens how to do it, they become more independent and understanding, instead of just having random organizations come in and fix things and then have them fall apart again. So they also implemented weather services and assistance by water management organizations in order to improve wash stations throughout the country. Another big organization that contributes to Madagascar's disaster aid is Madagascar Crisis Response Plan of 2020. It's a new initiative created by IOM Madagascar, and it aims to stabilize communities, improve preparedness, reduce disaster risk, and develop tracking tools to monitor major disaster risks and warn local residents. This organization has been very effective in monitoring drought as well through matrix tools with 4 different locations spread throughout the country. Outside aid benefits the country of Madagascar because they don't have the resources to prepare for the impacts of disaster or the means to recover immediately after by themselves. So outside aid for this developing country means a lot. and can really benefit. And these are just my references. But yeah, I hope that that was informal enough for you guys and that you learned a lot. Thank you, and have a great one.